we'll get Kevin Cooney to come in and pontificate with us as well, as he does so often. PhillyVoice Forbes, you can read all his stuff. Great baseball guy. Traditional baseball fans judge Gabe Kapler as a traditional baseball manager. Therefore, you probably think he's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. The game is no longer played in a traditional manner. He won 80 games with a bad roster last year. They're in the playoff hunt again.
Right.
Is it time for us to realize that managing has changed, and therefore we need to change the way we evaluate the manager?
It's, did you watch the Democratic debates where one of the guys said, it's the time for climate change worry is over. We're 10 years too late. I think it was Inslee. And then the Andrew Yang said, we all need to move to higher elevations.
Yeah.
Like it was way too late. It's been going on everywhere else for almost a decade now. Houston, Chicago, Boston. We're just really late.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is time. It's been time.
But the fans here are more traditional baseball fans, and therefore we're judging the manager as traditional baseball fans, but they're not playing a traditional baseball game. Does that make
they've
sense?
Been asleep for 10 years, man.
Let's bring Kevin Cooney in and get his take on that. I don't know, Kevin. I mean, I don't know what to think of Kapler. This night he pull my hair out. I'm not suggesting he's great. I'm not suggesting he's the worst. He's one guy I don't have a solid take on, man.
I have kind of come to this realization in my mind, and you're right. I mean, we're in a different age with baseball managing, as far as you just see the progression and the use of analytics and everything. That being said, you also look at Houston and A.J. Hinch, and you look at Dave Roberts and the way he handles the Dodgers. And there is a little bit of an old school feel with those teams where the manager goes more by gut sometimes than numbers. Sometimes he'll go against what his numbers say just because he feels like, okay, in this situation, I'll give you an example. A.J. Hinch with Charlie Morton in the World Series 2 years ago and using Morton to finish out a game that numbers would have told you he wasn't able to. I haven't seen that from Gabe Kapler yet. I see a guy who is too far sometimes in the binder and the iPad to make the adjustments. And I think the biggest fault with Kapler is the way he handles his players. The rah-rah personality, and I don't fault him, I fault Phillies management. It doesn't work in this town. It just doesn't. And I think when you see players who don't run out balls and not get punished and everything, there's the biggest problem for Gabe Kapler, I think.
Kev, it almost seems like to me that there's got to be a give and take between the fans and management at some point. And if it means that Gabe is fired, the next manager is not going to be like Joe Girardi. I keep trying to tell people that it's still going to be someone who is going to be analytically driven like the front office. But the front office at the same point still has to bring in someone who does that but also speaks a normal language, I think, to cater a little bit more to the paying customer. And that's only if they decide that they don't want to move forward with Gabe Kapler, of course. But I'm trying to say that I think both sides here need to give a little bit.
Moshe, I think the one thing, if you think about it, is, I wonder if any of the relationship is going to get mended. And it's not even with Kapler.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clintack and McPhail, look, Andy McPhail is as big a wet blanket as there's been in this city ever. As far as the way he comes in and he talks and everything. Wow. One of McPhail's big axioms is you buy the bats and you develop the arms. Well, they're starting pitching. He has they have a draft in the first round draft pick that's been a pitcher since this administration got in. It's like, what are you doing? I think there's a disconnect. This fan base, in a lot of ways, fairly or not, and Mike's right. Last year they had 80 wins with a roster that was, probably a 72, 73 win roster. And this year they're hanging in the race. I'll make the argument they're hanging in because the rest of the National League's so bad. But they're in the hunt. But there's a disconnect here. It's almost like, I don't know if you guys are big fans of the movie Good Morning Vietnam. There was a scene where they basically said, nothing personal, they just don't like you. I almost feel like that's the fans' reaction to this whole crew. Nothing personal, they just don't like you.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, and Kevin, you know this. I mean, the fans didn't like Charlie for a while, and they didn't like Doug Peterson for a while. They loved Chip Kelly for a while until they didn't. So, I don't know, maybe if Gabe just kind of sticks through this and they just kind of push through, do you think he has the personality that becomes likable in some capacity down the road?
I think we're well beyond the Gabe pushes through this phase with his fan base. I really do.
When they hired Charlie, that people didn't want Charlie. They wanted Leland. I mean, Charlie was a bumbling idiot. They didn't want this guy. And it took him a couple of years, but he finally won them over.
And what was the turning point on Charlie's relationship in this town?
Bench and Rollins, I guess.
No, it was fighting with Eskin.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Seriously. And when he fought with Eskin, and then they rallied to beat the Mets in 2007 and everything, and Charlie showed he was a fighter, that's what the town reacts to.
Yeah.
There's the difference between Charlie and Kapler. Charlie always came across as a guy who could, you could have a beer with, and if you said the wrong thing, he was going to right cross you across the jaw. You don't sense that. You don't sense that.
So what if Kevin? What if this team somehow got to the playoffs? I mean, are they a likable team then? Is the manager likable? I mean,
no. No, I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a negative way. I think that the flaws are still there, and I think people in this town. Look, Mike, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. The second wild card is one of the most bogus things in all of sports, okay? And you can't play for a second wild card. If this team gets a second wild card and finishes 11 games behind the Braves, or 12, or whatever, or the Nationals, because the Nationals could still win this division, does that make everybody feel better that they're going to be a third-place team that's snuck in on basically a back door? I don't think so.
Yeah, it should be noted that they are really the second wild card is probably their best shot, which means you'll be playing one potentially road playoff game.
In Washington or Atlanta. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So you're getting one road to then possibly go into play the Dodgers. So it doesn't seem that a playoff berth would end very well regardless. But are we starting to see some signs? They've won 6 of 8. It seems that Kapler is pushing some better buttons in his bullpen, and I don't know. Are we getting a better feel about this team as the calendar gets ready to hit the final month?
I think you look at it. The good signs are Harper looks real comfortable right now at the plate, and obviously his August, and Jeff mentioned it, has been outstanding. It's one of the best months we've seen from a Phillies player really since Ryan Howard left. Ryan Howard's heyday. Their bullpen, I thought that they've done a pretty good job with their bullpen and everything, but there's still holes here. The Rhys Hoskins situation, I know Hoskins had a better night last night, but I don't see where putting Hoskins at the top of the order really helps him a lot. A guy who's slumping, you want to pull him back usually and let him kind of break out of it in his own downplayed way and not feed him more at bats. That's the weird part of this. The lineup still has its inconsistencies. The starting pitching, the fact that if you had them in a 5-game series right now, that their number 2 and number 3 starters will probably be Drew Smiley and Jason Vargas, that kind of limits you on what they can do. I just don't think that, and, Mike, there's that stretch of the schedule at the end of September at Atlanta, at Cleveland, 5 in Washington, right before in the last 2 weeks with no days off in there. That's just going to expose what this team's weaknesses are going to be.
Kevin, I'm glad you brought up Hoskins, because Mike and I were talking the other day about how I think we've got a pretty good grasp now of what he is, which is a very streaky power hitter who has developed a good eye. He walks a lot, but for 2 or 3 years in a row now is kind of worn down with the batting average as the season's gone on. You talk about the ability to develop arms and none in the minor leagues. Is it feasible that we should be thinking about exploring, not we, but the Phillies should be exploring maybe trading Rhys for an arm in the offseason? And when I say that, I have to caution that they're not going to be able to get Jacob deGrom for him because he is what he is. But, there might be an arm out there. It might be Dylan Bundy on the Orioles, a decent pitcher on a bad team who would be better off somewhere else. But is that realistic now?
I don't think it is for a couple of reasons. One, with Hoskins, for them, it's big because it's financial certainty, in a sense where, he's going to be, arbitration and everything the next couple of years. So you're not worried about having to pay him mega big bucks, okay? So for a team that figures on adding another starting pitcher, presumably this year in free agency, maybe a Garrett Cole, maybe a Madison Bumgarner, maybe Cole Hamels, that's one thing to keep in mind. Two, for all the flaws that you see in Hoskins, he still is the second best power threat. I still think that he's young enough where some of the stuff that, with the new hitting coach, some of the stuff that has developed here that I think people that are worrying about, taking too many pitches, if you will. Just looking at, dead red fastballs first pitch because he never swings first pitch. I think those are something that a new hitting coach can correct, and he's not so entrenched in his habits at this point that you will worry that it's not completely unbreakable. I get that they need pitching and everything. I don't have enough faith in Rhys Hoskins and replacing, trading Rhys Hoskins and somehow finding an arm that will fill the gap. Because then you better go get Anthony Rendon to play third base and move then Alec Boehm the first. There's a lot of moving pieces here, and I think, but there's a lot of moving pieces here.
Right.
I'd rather them focus on just signing good starting pitching this offseason.
All right, I want to leave you with this because Jim Thome yesterday said if I'm Rhys Hoskins and Harper, I would follow Charlie Manuel around for the next 2 months. And he went on to say about how comfortable he felt and how great it was to have him. What if these guys really warm up to Charlie? He's only here for 2 months, and he goes back out the door. These guys get dropped back off at the doorstep with another set of instructions in their head. You know what I mean? Like, you think that's a good thing that these guys are getting this little quick blast of Charlie, and then he kind of goes and vanishes again?
Well, it's funny because I was surprised Matt Klentak put the barrier up so quickly that, this is just the end of the year and everything. Keep it open. See how it goes and everything. Now, obviously, some of that would be on Charlie at 75 years old if he wants to do a full schedule at this point. Now, take the overnight flight to the West Coast and all that. But, you're right. I'm a little surprised that they put the barrier up. And what happens if they warm up to Charlie? They're not going away from analytics. And Charlie's not analytical no matter what they tried to spin on the press conference after firing John Malley. If this is the case, then in that circumstance, you better have Charlie at arm's length, and you better have Charlie right here in case these guys really want to use him as a tool coming down the road. And that makes it difficult for a new hitting coach coming in.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we know Charlie is, kind of always around spring training and all that stuff, but how much of a crutch could he really be at 75 going on 76 years old next year when somebody doesn't have their hitting season shoes on all of a sudden? They got to go to him, and it kind of supersedes whoever's the guy that is the hitting coach. So this is going to be interesting to see how it ends.
And Mike, the one difference is when Charlie's at spring training, they have like 15 different other instructors there, so right. Charlie kind of blends into the crowd. Charlie may hang around the cage, but Charlie was very careful not to overlap his responsibilities, if you will. And so, you're right. I'm going to be fascinated to see how this goes.
All right, down the stretch they come. Night off. Marlins on the way. And, Kevin, you know how all the fans are thinking. You beat the Sox, you lose to the Marlins. So hopefully they buck that trend.
Yep, they have to at this point. Can't take 2 or 3 for the Marlins, or can't lose 2 or 3 to the Marlins right now.
Kevin Cooney, check him out at Kevin Cooney, Forbes, Philly Voice, and kind enough to join us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, guys.